The Locked On Podcast Network presents the College Sports Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in college sports. From our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. Bringing you the real story. Why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The College Sports Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in college sports. You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
For me, it's been a while since I've watched Miami play. Miami coming off the bye week, so I am looking forward to my favorite rivalry in sports. I mean, I grew up on Miami versus Florida State. You know, as a child of the 80s, I grew up for a long stretch of my childhood into early adulthood. Every single year, it seemed like this game came down to a field goal, and it came down to number one versus number two, or number one versus number three, and a national championship eliminator almost every single time these teams played. And I'm glad that both teams are good. I mean, regardless of what happened in Charlottesville last weekend, Florida State still very dangerous and has an opportunity to kind of erase that loss from memory if they can pull it off against Miami.
I would absolutely agree. I'm older than you, but like I remember like mid 80s when I was a little kid and just first watching them, those games, that's when it really started. And just the draft picks, Dion and, all these different guys, and Toretta came along and stuff like that. It was just great. Every year, one of them, somebody picked them to win it. Like they were preseason. One of them was number one preseason pretty much every year. So yeah, this rivalry is a lot of fun. And it's why I really got into the recruiting side of things, because the way they recruited and changed the entire college football landscape. So with that, speaking of elite talent, I'm going to throw this to you. Besides the obvious, like Ruben Bain is incredible, etc., which key players from Miami do you think need to really step up to beat the Florida State Seminoles?
Well, I mean, I think about the importance on defense of gap integrity, trying to, contain Thomas Castellanos. And I think that the coordinator chess match between Miami's Corey Heatherman on defense and Gus Malzahn leading Florida State's offense is going to be huge. But for Miami's defensive tackles, I think this is really, really important for them to play disciplined. The guy who's graded out the best so far has been Ahmad Moten, who's been a starter all season long. Transfer David Blay has done a good job as well. And Justin Scott, former five-star recruit who's in his second year, who's the third defensive tackle, has stepped up and made some plays this year. So, of course, you mentioned Ruben Bain on the other edge. Akeem Mesidor is going to have a big opportunity. And both Bain and Mesidor this year not only have been really effective as pass rushers, but they've both graded really well against the run also, which I think is going to be important against the number one rushing offense in college football. So just the importance of communication and assignment football on defense is going to be big on that side of the ball. On offense, I think it's no secret, and Florida State may try to take this away from Miami and force Carson Beck to beat them downfield, but really Miami, their bread and butter, has been setting the tone with the running game. Mark Fletcher and Marty Brown, Miami's top two running backs, have both played really well behind an offensive line that's one of the best in the country. So, Cristobal is going to try to establish the run. I think that's no secret. An X factor will be, and we'll probably get into some injury stuff in a little bit, but the possible return of Jordan Lyle, who actually began the season as Miami's starting tailback, but hasn't played since that Notre Dame game due to injury, that could add, another element. And he's more of a home run hitter, got more speed than the other two Miami running backs do. So that could be something else to watch out for. And I think in this one, when you think about the passing game, Malachi Toney, true freshman, playing his first road game. So that's going to be something to monitor how he does. But Toney has had an excellent start to the year. And then you've got the experienced super senior, 6-year senior CJ Daniels, who's been a reliable target for Carson Beck so far. Because, Brian, I would imagine, Florida State's probably going to play with a lot of heavy boxes, and Miami's going to need to complete passes to win this game. So watch out for some of these receivers.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. And since you just brought up some of the receivers, Florida State safeties tackled like crap against Virginia. It's weird because they were so good in their first few games. Nobody really knows why, but I'd imagine they'd be a little more focused. Tackling Malachi from somebody who's watched him play several times is not a fun time. that is difficult. You got to size that up. You got to make sure you get the right angles and all that stuff. He's a key player in this game, and hats off to Malachi for coming in a year early, by the way, for those who don't know. He enrolled a year early at University of Miami.
Yeah.
He's been really, really good. It's very rare to see that. So good for him. I think Florida State, just like you said, they're going to play up and challenge them to throw over the top in 50-50 balls. Florida State's got good DBs, but Miami's got good receivers. I have no idea how that's going to go. It's the reason it's called 50-50, but there are very few quarterbacks that have more accuracy than Carson Beck. So FSU's DBs are going to be up against it. So that brings up my number one. Some way, somehow, they've got to get pressure with 4 a lot more than they have this year. And if they don't, Miami will win. End of story, period. Florida State's pass rush is beyond anemic with 4. Just completely terrible. I forget the number, but they're in the bottom 5 or 6 in the country, G6 included, with like pressuring with their base on amount of time for the opposing quarterback to get the ball off. That's not going to get it done against a solid team, along the Canes. So no offense to Virginia. They've got a good run game. I'll take Miami with Maui Noah and all those guys. So Florida State has to get home with that. Second question for you, which player or group are you most concerned about for the Canes possibly being exposed, even if it's just in a big moment, or overall going into this game?
It's hard. Like, Miami's obviously played really well to start the year. So I have questions. Like, it's hard to say like, hey, this group has been bad. Like, you can't really say that. I don't think to this point, Miami's defensive secondary, which looks a lot better. I don't think they've really been tested that much for me to say, hey, that group is, completely turned around from what they were last year. So I would say, for Miami's corners, which are, big and physical when you have guys like Xavier Lucas and OJ Frederic, but Deuce Robinson, that's a test. 6'6", leading Florida State in receiving. I mean, he was everything in that Virginia game. Certainly wasn't the offense's fault or his fault, despite that, controversial non-catch near the end. He played a huge role in Florida State's offense, and that's someone Miami's going to have to be wary of. On the offensive side, how's Carson Beck going to bounce back? Florida was not his best game. The Florida defense, I think, did some good things to kind of take some downfield stuff away, but Beck's timing was also off in that game. So first 3 games of the year, Carson, looked like a genuine Heisman contender. Didn't look that way against the Gators. So I think how he bounces back is going to be important against the Seminoles. And an overall, concern or question that I have, Brian, couple of them. I already mentioned first road game of the year for Miami. So being able to handle that environment is something I think Carson Beck, who's played in, big road environments during his time in the SEC, is going to have to kind of set the tone for his teammates, and his leadership is going to be important. Miami has at no point this season been trailing in a football game. So that happens this weekend, and I would say Florida State is a team that's very much built to play with a lead, especially for their defense. So, if Miami, we haven't seen them play from behind this year. I think Florida State's a lot better, defensively when they're playing with the lead. So that's a question that, may or may not be answered this Saturday. So that's something I'm looking at.
I brought that up on my show the last couple of days, and congrats to you for bringing that. I wasn't sure if Miami trailed yet or not. They've been in some tight situations, but I mean, even the game against Florida was tight until like the last 4 to 6 minutes. They just killed them. But I'm curious to see what Miami can do. At some point, it's going to happen. It may not be the FSU game. You get down. Carson's been down before in bad situations. They were down 28-0 last year at Alabama, and he let them back.
Right.
They didn't end up winning, but it wasn't his fault. Like, they took the lead after being down by 28. He is capable. And that Georgia receiving group dropped more passes than any team in the country literally. So Miami's receiver group's a little more dependable, especially CJ Daniels. He's got great hands. I'm curious to see if they're down, if they open it up. This is my question about Miami. Mario is very conservative. Will they allow Carson to just, we can win some of these one-on-ones, take some more shots? I think he can absolutely do it. I think he's an NFL quarterback, but does Mario really let him? I have no idea the answer to that, but if you got the lead, we'll never find out. So on the other side of that, I mean, if Florida State gets behind, you brought that up, their offense is predicated with the lead. They do play up-tempo. I think it would be a little easier for Florida State, but they would still rather run the ball. Both these teams are run first, play with the lead, and take play action shot teams. Different styles of offense, but play action is their bread and butter for both of them, and they do a very good job of it.
The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for the weekend with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It's quick, it's easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet.
Diego Pavia versus Ty Simpson, College Game Day. What more could you want?
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
So speaking of two guys that move the game forward, Ty Simpson, Diego Pavia. So tell me, Ty Simpson versus Vandy, like what do you see with Vandy's defense? How can Ty Simpson attack this defense? Where is Vanderbilt in y'all's eyes most vulnerable?
Well, I think Vanderbilt is probably most vulnerable where Alabama is strongest, and that is in the pass defense. And I think Alabama is clearly going to have the better athletes, but Vanderbilt plays sort of that one heartbeat, right? I mean, Vanderbilt also just plays, they are a true reflection of their coach. They seem rather no nonsense. And, if they're going to do it all the same way. And if that happens to be wrong, so be it, but they're all going to be wrong together. And there's certainly something very noble about that. And it can be very successful if everybody's on the right page and you're going in the right direction. So I think Alabama's advantages are going to be in the passing game because, frankly, Alabama's running game has been rather pedestrian this year. Jam Miller came back, and he was huge in the win against Georgia. There's no doubt about that. However, he had 16 carries for 46 yards. I mean, he had a few catches for a few yards, and one of them was huge to seal the game. But it's not like Alabama's got a Najee Harris, a TJ Yeldon, a Trent Richardson, a Derrick Henry, Mark Ingram, any of those guys back there right now. They just don't have that. They've got some running backs that are pretty doggone good, but their strength lies in the passing game. And that is certainly, even in the Florida State contest, and I was there and it was awful and I could say all these things about it, but even in the Florida State game, you could tell that loss wasn't on Ty Simpson. That loss was many other factors. So I think Ty Simpson's been rather consistent, and I think you could make the case for him being the best quarterback in the SEC right now, if it's not Diego Pavia.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this game features, I think statistically based on quarterback rating, the two best quarterbacks in the conference. Now, what I really love about Ty Simpson is that he is so poised. He throws with great anticipation. He can fit the ball in tight windows, all of the things you need out of a distributing quarterback. Like, he is Ryan Grubb's perfect quarterback. He is the right-handed Michael Penix, right? And that's exactly what they did with Michael Penix at Washington, is what they're doing with Ty Simpson now, getting the ball out quick, designing route concepts that really stretch the field vertically and horizontally. So they put a lot of pressure on the secondary, and you can't, and it makes it, with his timing and his rhythm, it makes it, Luke, where you can't really get to him, because Georgia tried. Georgia had free runners. I think up front, as far as blitz package wise, they had a pretty decent game plan to try to stop Ty Simpson. But Ty Simpson gets the ball out quick. So, like, there's other ways that I feel like Vandy's defense is going to have to pressure this team, and they're going to have to, if they're going to stop this passing game or slow it down, because there's not really any stopping it, but if they're going to slow it down, they've got to get hands on receivers. They've got to disrupt the timing, not necessarily with Ty Simpson, but with the receivers out on the perimeter too.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is, for the most part, Ty Simpson's been on the same page with his guys. And it's, oddly enough, the one guy who has not shown the ability to make all the catches when the passes are right is Ryan Williams, who had a pretty good game against Vanderbilt last year. He made a dazzling touchdown grab and run. But I think he, like everybody else in that Vanderbilt game last year, probably would like to have that one over. Yep. But Ty Simpson has been really, really efficient. No interceptions yet. Now, that is a monster positive, and everybody loves to talk about it. What you do worry about, though, is like a guy who's made 47 free throws in a row, and then he misses the one free throw that's number 48 that in the most crucial of moments. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, the 47 free throws don't matter anymore. It was that one that you missed that was the big problem. And that's what you worry about is like when he throws an interception, I just hope it's like in garbage time or it's like at the very beginning of the game and the opponent doesn't score from it, because you'd hate it to be his first interception be something like a crucial pick six.
Yeah, I mean, that was a big factor in last year's game was a pick six from Jalen Milroe early in the game. It just kind of set the tone for the game. So no matter when you get a pick six, it's always very, very detrimental in a game that's tight like this. So switching gears to Diego Pavia, is there anything you want to know about Vanderbilt's offense and Diego Pavia? Like he's a special dude, and I'll talk about Bama's defense here in a second. But
y'all gotta love him, right? I mean, he's just got to be sort of. I don't know if Vanderbilt could ever have a Johnny Manziel, and I know he's going to be there on the sidelines, and I know that's who Diego Pavia idolized growing up. But I think Vanderbilt, as much as Vanderbilt could have a Johnny Manziel, like not this. Vanderbilt's never going to have the most party animal, crazy, wild and woolly gunslinger quarterback. I wouldn't think. I mean, I guess Jay Cutler was in there somewhere, but Diego Pavia. Is just such he's like a Nashville legend, right? I mean, he's going to be that, right? Regardless of what happens.
Yeah, he already is. And this result, I don't think has any bearing on that. But I mean, just think if he somehow comes out with a win Saturday, I mean, you might as well build a statue. I mean, he's a generational type of talent. And I look at him as kind of the humble version of Johnny Manziel. He does a lot of the same things that Manziel does, except for party. He, instead of sneaking into bars at 3:00 in the morning, he, according to the Netflix documentary, he's breaking into the weight room and he's throwing with his guys. I mean, he's doing the things that you need to do to be successful as a quarterback because he has a chip on his shoulder. He's 5'10". He's got all the measurables stacked up against him, but he makes up with it in everything else he does. He's a tough kid, great leader. Make sure he picks up everybody around him, and that's what he needs to do. And that's what's been huge with this turnaround with Vanderbilt, dating back to last year. I mean, that's been the biggest thing. So when you look at what the impact he has on this team, he's the heart and soul, and he is the heart. He's almost the heart and soul of Nashville. He's almost the heartbeat of the city. Like you're seeing more Vanderbilt stuff around town because, as you know, if it's not orange, it's crimson in Nashville. That's kind of where the allegiances lie. That's kind of where the most fans of that's how most fanhood lies here in Nashville. So, yeah, he's been a huge part of what Vanderbilt's trying to do. And the scary part is like everything that he was deficient in last year, he's improved a great deal. Like every passing attribute he has, pocket presence, pocket awareness, accuracy, timing. The only thing he hasn't really improved on yet, and I think that's just more of his physical limitations, is his deep ball accuracy. All of his interceptions have been on deep shots where he's underthrown the receiver. So that's not great, but I think everything else is elevated to the point where Vanderbilt's scoring 49 points a game. They are racking up nearly 500 yards of offense, and they are killer in the red zone, killer on third down, great in the rush game. Not as great in the passing game, but they just don't really – the volume's just not there to really get things going, but they're good enough in the passing game. So, I mean, this is probably – I would say this is Vanderbilt's most loaded roster I think that they've ever had.
I think that's very fair. James Franklin days, I mean, they had some dudes, but it's hard to really remember who any of them were. You just knew that, those teams were winning 9 games a year, it felt like. But I do wonder, and again, this isn't to try and talk trash. I know Pavia came out very brashedly and said, is that a word? Brashedly? Or is it brazenly? I say brazenly.
Brazenly, well, brashedly can't.
No, brazenly works. Brashedly, I don't know.
Let's make it a word, Let's make it a word.
But I like to learn from myself when I'm on here. But for sure. He said something about how if we just do what we're supposed to do, I mean, it won't be close. Not verbatim, but something like that. And I was asked about that on a Montgomery radio station today. And I said, hey, look, any other time, any other Vanderbilt quarterback had ever said that in the history of there being football, we all would have laughed right out of the stadium. But this isn't 2017, whoever that lineman was with the very effeminate voice saying, hey, Alabama, you're next. Nobody took that seriously. Everybody thought, oh, my God, what have you just stepped in? And this is different. I really believe, whether it happens or not, I believe Diego Pavia believes that. It's not lip service. I think he truly believes that. And so, in a way, I respect it. And it's up to Alabama to stop it.
Yeah, absolutely. He wholeheartedly believes it. He believes that they can go 12-0 and win a national championship. He believes they can win the SEC. He believes all the goals out there, the small ones, the large ones, he believes in every single one of them. And that's the thing that I think galvanizes the team. Like, they know he believes it. He's not just out there talking trash to talk trash. He actually believes that, and those guys, and he believes that his guys, and it's because he's like, hey, it's because my offensive line is great. It's because we have a great defense. It's because I have great weapons to throw to. And he makes sure he shouts those guys out after he makes his bold statement. He goes on to give, like, he usually goes on to give credit to the guys. So it's something that I think really is a big difference mentally, emotionally for this team. And that's, you got to look at that and have a lot of respect for that. And most times when people talk trash, it's just that. It's just lip service. They don't really, it's whatever. But he's full-fledged believing it.
Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's a 401k or properties or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. I linked all my accounts to Monarch and immediately spotted a few subscriptions I wasn't even using. Canceling those all can save you money every month. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL.
You are Locked On Longhorns, your daily podcast on the Texas Longhorns, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
We spent a lot of this offseason, I think, expecting this to be a juggernaut battle at quarterback. On Locked On Gators on Tuesday, I was like, we expected this to be, I don't know if you were ever into wrestling in your life, but I was like, this was supposed to be Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant, The Rock, Stone Cold, Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart. Not at all. Not even a little bit. What is your take on what was supposed to be a battle of the superstars and just isn't looking like that right now?
Yeah, 2 5-star quarterbacks, right? 2 guys who are their top-ranked quarterbacks in their respective recruiting classes. Arch Manning in 2023, DJ Lagway in 2024, and it's been a bit of a struggle for both of them. It's kind of tough to really figure out what Arch Manning is, right? His one game that he played against a Power 4 opponent did not go well. It was Texas's season-opening loss at Ohio State, and Arch looked overwhelmed, and it looked like the atmosphere and environment was too much for him, and Texas lost that game 14-7. Now, the last 3 weeks, we've seen a lot more good from Arch Manning, and Texas is 3-0 in that time, but they've played San Jose State, UTEP, and Sam Houston. So it's the first time since August that we're going to see the Longhorns play a Power 4 team, and obviously Arch's first opportunity to show what he could do against a very good Florida defense. And then, DJ Lagway, it's one of the biggest disappointments in college football this year. I mean, Florida has been one of the biggest disappointments as a team, if not the biggest disappointment as a team. Your audience probably thinks they're at the top of that list. But it's obviously been a struggle for Lagway. That LSU game was rough. It didn't get much better against Miami. So we'll see. Obviously, both teams have had 2 weeks to prepare for this game. Maybe the offenses have found some things. Maybe the quarterbacks have found some things. But you talked about it, Brandon. All offseason long, I think everybody on both sides of this matchup had this date marked down as what could have been one of the best quarterback matchups in the country this year. And there's a lot less steam going into this game as there was, a month or two ago.
Yeah, I think going into this year, everyone was like, oh, this is going to be, the first overall pick in the 2026 NFL draft and the potential first overall pick in the 2027 NFL draft. And now, well, no, just not at all. What is it about Texas's offense? Because of course, I think with me, one of the difficulties when talking about Texas's offense is that, yeah, it looked great against San Jose State, UTEP, and Sam Houston State. And it looked like cleaner football, but the only Power 4 opponent faced is Ohio State, and that makes it a little difficult to really evaluate, because that was also week 1. That was also facing an elite defense like that. It's not just that you faced a Power 4 team; it's that you faced an elite defense there. Right. And this offense just hasn't looked like what I think most people thought of when talking about this Texas offense, which also I think it was fair to expect Texas to be more of a defense-oriented team this year than in years prior, just because, I mean, let's call it what it is. You were stacked last year, still stacked this year. What is it about this Texas offense that kind of took a little bit to get back on track and has now seemed to find their footing?
I will say this, Texas's offense wasn't great in weeks 2 or 3, right? I mean, they beat San Jose State 38-7. They scored 28 of their 38 points in a 5-minute stretch where Texas had 4 takeaways on defense, and the Longhorn offense was just able to turn those into a bunch of quick touchdowns. But like outside of that stretch, it wasn't a great offensive showing against San Jose State. And then in week 3 against UTEP, a pretty bad UTEP team, Texas only scored 27 for the entire game. And Arch Manning had a stretch in that game where he had 10 straight incomplete passes, and he kind of looked lost. So it really was, week 4, the most recent game the Longhorns have played, when they beat Sam Houston 55-0. That was the first time all year where we've really seen this offense look really good. Now, Sam Houston's one of the worst defenses and maybe one of the worst teams in all of FBS. So good news is you win 55-0. You score on your first 9 possessions of the game. Texas scored on every drive where Arch Manning was on the field. So that's everything the Longhorns kind of wanted and needed to see against the Bearcats they saw. But obviously now you're on the road. You're going up against a much better Florida defense. So yeah, the offense, I don't think it was as simple as like they turned it around instantly after Ohio State. They were still kind of finding their own way in weeks 2 and 3. The question is, did they really find something against Sam Houston, or is Sam Houston just that bad to where anybody could have done that type of thing against them?
Is there any, I don't want to say fear. I feel like fear is an awful word, but it's the word I'm going to use, even though I acknowledge it's not the right word. Is there any kind of fear against saying, hey, this is Texas's first time going back on the road since Ohio State, Texas's first time facing a Power 4 opponent since Ohio State? What if this offense does take kind of those steps back now that, again, it's a Power 4 defense, a good Power 4 defense, and on the road? And I know that a lot of people are talking about Florida's fan base maybe checking out. They're still going to sell that damn stadium out every single, like they're going to do that every week. So is there any fear of kind of regressing? Not to 7 points again, but just to regressing back to not great, Bob?
Yeah, I think so. I think for a lot of Texas fans, the jury's kind of still out on Arch Manning and whether or not he's ready to be the guy this year, to lead Texas back to the SEC title game, to lead Texas back to the college football playoff semifinal for the 3rd straight year. There's still a lot of folks who are just kind of waiting to see him do it against a really good team. So I think there's some fear there. And I've been trying to tell Longhorn fans all week, like, look at what Garrett Nussmeier did against the Florida defense. Look at what Carson Beck, who's one of the Heisman favorites right now, according to our friends at FanDuel, look at what he did against the Florida defense. If you're expecting Arch Manning to do what he did against Sam Houston this weekend in the Swamp, you're going to have a bad time. So, he's the guy that everyone's most focused on. His last name's Manning. He's the 5-star. That goes without saying. But yeah, I think there is some fear that there will be a little bit of a regression for Arch Manning. I think it's natural, again, based on the opponent. But yeah, the one time we've seen Texas play against a Power 4 defense, things did not go well. So there are questions about this Texas running game. Now, the good news for the Horns, they're going to get their 2 top running backs back in this game. A couple of guys in Trey Wisner and CJ Baxter who have missed the last couple of games for Texas. Hopefully help at wide receiver is coming with Emmett Mosley V, the Stanford transfer. He's expected to make his Longhorn debut this week. Having the bye allows Texas to get some guys back. Obviously, the same is true for Florida. But yeah, I mean, the run game has been inconsistent at times. Texas ranks in the 120s in the country in penalty yards per game. So they've lacked some discipline. The offensive line has been inconsistent. The receivers at times haven't been there. So there is a little bit of like, what really is this offense? Again, like you said, I don't know if fear is the right word, but there's still some wait and see. Like, is our offense, like, are we really good, or are we going to have to win a bunch of games, 20-17 if we are going to make it back to the playoff?